who he admitted to the pack. He groaned slightly at the reminder of all the paperwork waiting for him back at the manor. He knew for a fact there were at least a half-dozen applications for admittance in that pile. Bennett refolded the papers and dropped them onto the ground in front of the couple. You and your wife used her position on the pack's finance council to embezzle money. For this you are banished, Bennett finished succinctly. Rick gestured to the couple, and two of his enforcers stepped forward. Vanessa, tiny but fierce as hell, held the branding iron with the large B. It was imbued with magic to prevent the shifter's abilities from healing the wound. Marcus, over 6.5 feet tall and the definition of stoic, carried the butane torch. When Rick's father was alpha of the pack Rick had grown up in, he'd watched his father's men cut the hands off wolves when they were banished. He'd opted for the less extreme, modernized version. A couple of his betas moved to hold the kings down as Marcus lit the torch and heated the brand. Calvin sobbed and begged for mercy, but his wife had a strange look on her face. Rick watched as her eyes darted around the empty yard, not settling on anything. Just before Vanessa laid the brand on the back of her husband's right hand, Mrs. King yelled out, "Wait!" Normally they would have simply ignored her, since everyone begged for branding to stop. Not that he had to perform the banishing ritual that often. No, everyone froze because Rick raised his hand just as she called out. Wait, Alpha. Allow us to make reparations." Her voice was surprisingly calm, considering how distraught she'd acted when she'd first exited her home. "Your home and land will be taken and sold by the pack as reparations," Bennett informed her. "You have nothing else of value to offer." "Our daughter. She is young and beautiful and would make you a wonderful mate, Alpha." Only because he was watching, Rick noticed the surprised look Calvin threw his wife before looking down once more. Eyes narrowing, Rick approached the couple again. He crouched before Mrs. King so they were nearly eye to eye. "You would sell me your child so that you might, what, stay in your lavish home, remain members of the Kincaid pack?" She bowed her head, playing at being submissive, but Rick could smell the hatred and anger rolling off her. "We understand that may be too much to ask." Grunting, he stood again and stared down at her. "You wish to be able to leave of your own volition, not marked as banished." It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway. Rick took a step back and subtly surveyed the yard, searching for whatever it was Mrs. King had been trying not to look at when she'd been panicking. Since Bennett had reported no one else was in the house, he had a nasty suspicion brewing in his gut. While he looked, he continued to keep her talking. "How old is your daughter?" Sounding smug, and obviously thinking he was seriously considering her offer, she answered, "She's 18 and completely untouched, Alpha." Just as his eyes fell on a long, narrow, dilapidated shed at the very back edge of the property, Rick's ears picked up an odd rhythm coming from Calvin King's chest. It had started when his wife declared their daughter's age. Rick met Bennett's eyes. His second was frowning fiercely. "Sir, there isn't another person in that house. We would have scented them." Rick didn't answer out loud. He moved his eyes to the shed, then met Bennett's again and raised his brows the tiniest bit. He turned back to Mildred King and saw she was still looking at the ground. Bennett silently gestured for Vanessa to accompany him. She rolled her eyes but followed, twirling the still red-hot branding iron between her fingers. Rick resisted the urge he suddenly had to rub at the headache forming behind his temples. This simple banishment was about to become complicated as fuck. He just knew it. "This daughter of yours," he began, keeping the king's attention on him. "What makes her so special that I should consider taking her as my mate? Never mind the fact that if he ever took a mate, they would be male. Apparently the kings hadn't bothered to get to know their alpha when they were stealing from the pack. Must have been too busy inflating invoices and pocketing the difference." She is a very beautiful alpha, and completely innocent," Mrs. King repeated. Rick narrowed his eyes, but she hadn't dared to raise her own from the ground. "So you said."